Good afternoon everyone. As you can no doubt hear, it is absolutely lashing it down outside, which it seems to always be doing in Devon, even in the summer. But yeah, it's you just get used to it after a while. I've got myself a nice cup of BOVRIL. Does anyone remember BOVRIL? I recently discovered it again. It's basically like thin gravy, really. So yeah, I bought myself a jar of it, and yeah, I've sort of been really enjoying it. I remember drinking it when I was younger. I think it was given to people because it's quite protein rich and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just really nice. I make it quite thick so your spoon can almost stand up in it. But it's really nice. I've stopped drinking coffee, and the main reason for that was because I couldn't drink coffee without sugar in it, and I wanted to cut down on that. And I was finding, well, after stopping coffee, I realised how it was affecting my mood, how I was sort of peaking and crashing. So now I just drink tea and beer. But not coffee anymore. I can't drink it without sugar, so I'm not going to drink it. Anyway, this is a pair of CELEF speakers. So CELEF is a brand, I think, long gone, but I think they became PROAC. Might be wrong on that, or there was some interconnection. I'm sure someone will tell me in the comments. So I've not come across these before, but they're very interesting, and they came to me for a repair, and I found out the problem, and when I did the measurements on them, I got back to the client and said, well, actually there is more of a problem with these. They have a super tweeter, which we'll talk about in a minute, and they're not working, and they're a very unique super tweeter, and to try and replace those I think would be impossible. I would have to go down the route of finding something different to integrate into these, probably the Coles 4001. She didn't want to go to that expense, which I completely understand. So I'd helped her out previously on another pair of speakers, so she said make me an offer on them, because otherwise I don't know what was going to happen to them, and these are very unique, and I basically gave her 100 quid for them, and they need work, but these might go into my own collection. I have quite a few speakers obviously that I've collected, refurbished and stored over the years, but these are quite unique. So yeah, these are made by CELEF, and these are the PE1 model. So CELEF stands for Celestion and KEF, sort of pushed together. And that came from, I think, one of CELEF's early designs, which used the, I think probably the Celestion HF1300 and the KEF B200 woofer. I'm pretty sure that's where it came from. So I've got some literature on these, which I'll flash up in a minute. But these are a sort of fairly early speaker that followed like the BC1, Rogers LS36, this 2 cubic foot box design, lossy box, heavily damped. These are lined with really thick bituminous like felt, and then some foam inside. I've kind of employed that system in my own designs, and it makes the cabinets just really dead. So yeah, so they're pretty big. They're really heavy as well. 25 inches high, so that's 635 millimeters. In depth, including the cover, they are 12 3/4 inches, so 32 centimeters, 320 millimeters, and then width 11 inches, 28 centimeters, 280 millimeters, and they're pretty heavy. Right, so let's take the covers off and have a look. So covers are on these little bobble fixings. Smell of cigarettes. I mean, the cloth on that isn't too bad, but you can see where we've got a line around here. Whether that'll clean or not, I'll probably recloth them. So here we are, and this is the interesting part of these. The reason I associate CELEF with ProAct later is because the base port is loaded up with drinking straws, which is what ProAct did. In fact, I'm working on a one-off pair of ProAct tablets at the moment. Here's a quick picture. And on those I've made new baffles using a 4-inch Vifa woofer and a Dynavox super tweeter. And yeah, that's going to turn out quite well, I think. Anyway, so we have Kef's B200 woofer, and these are in beautiful condition. They really are lovely things. Can't say I'm very keen on the way they've been mounted, just screwed onto the baffle without recessing. I mean, you've got all this chassis exposed. Tweeter, I'm not sure who made that. It looks like Audax, might be wrong. And here's the interesting part, a piezoelectric super tweeter, and I've not seen this before on a speaker. Saying that, very old 50s speakers once or twice, but yeah, normally you'd find something like the Coles 4001 or something like that used as a super tweeter. Let's take the cover off this one as well. So you can see them both. So we can see in the measurements that these aren't working. So I've numbered these speaker 1 and speaker 2. So I've got the measurements here as well. So if we look at this speaker here, it's on axis. I'll put that measurement in now. You're going to see from about 8 or 9 kilohertz we just really roll off, and that's where this should be picking up the slack really. I mean, these are meant to be plus minus 3 dB from 50 hertz all the way up to 30 kilohertz. So yeah, that roll off is not what you'd expect to see. And also on this speaker we had quite a lump around the 700 hertz region, which is in the woofer's range. And there was a fair bit of distortion in the tweeter's range as well, so I'll put the distortion measurement in now. And I could hear that when the test sweeps were running, so it's between 2.5 and 6K. So if we look at the other one, which I've called number 2 because there's no serial numbers on them, here's the on axis. It doesn't look too bad actually, but again we're rolling off at around 9K, which is where the super tweeter should be working. Here's the spectral decay for number 2, because if I remember there was a odd bit of stored energy down the bottom. yeah, here it is. And that kind of just leapt out at me, similar to the first, to this speaker, but we've got this reoccurrence down the bottom, which may be a cabinet reflection or could be anything really. And here's a comparison on axis of the two. So they're not too bad as a comparison. There is quite a difference up high and the lump that this one's got. But yeah, so yeah, interesting that these use a, I think you pronounce it piezoelectric. The radiating surface is tiny, so these don't have like a coil or a magnet behind them, and because of that they're almost kind of electrostatic. They can give you really good openness. I'm quite a fan of a super tweeter. Not that my hearing necessarily goes up that high. I mean, if you look at music in general, by the time you get to 10k, there isn't a huge amount going on anymore. But for me, a super tweeter just gives space and openness to the speaker, not like a normal tweeter can do. So I mean, most tweeters will play, modern tweeters will play up to 18k, maybe a little bit higher, but they're struggling up there. The speed that's needed, and you know, if you're using a bigger dome tweeter to play quite low to meet a woofer, so you get better off axis, you're asking a lot of the tweeter to play from, let's say, 2 kilohertz all the way up to 20 consistently. So I've always been a fan of using a super tweeter. It just opens up the speaker, and I find that the space and air and just overall clarity is better. Obviously it's an expense and more design on the crossover, because you're rolling this tweeter down, and then you're using second, third, whatever is needed, order high pass for your tweeter. I think a lot of super tweeters were used in the early days because the Celestion HF1300 was kind of the main tweeter. Started off as the GE Presence unit, I think. But I think the name HF1300 came from the fact that after 13 kilohertz, it was just dead. So if you wanted to extend the range, you needed a super tweeter, which is tended to be the Coles unit back then, which is still a bloody good tweeter, super tweeter. And if you let the HF1300 naturally roll off, I mean, it literally drops off a cliff at 13k. There's a bit of break up there. So like the BC1, I think rolled it off at 9 kilohertz, similar with the DM4, that sort of thing. And when I've used it with a super tweeter in some of my one-off builds, I always roll the top off as well. I don't leave it to naturally roll off. But yeah, this led me down a bit of a rabbit hole in looking into these, and I can't find a replacement for these, assuming these are dead. I could put the Coles super tweeter in here, but I want to experiment with a piezoelectric tweeter because I found some, they're really cheap, and the performance has been quite a revelation really. Still got my BOVRIL on the go. Honestly, it's a meal in a cup. Lovely stuff. Yeah, so super tweeters, as I was referring to with the HF1300, for example, not that that's used in these, but it will roll off about 13k, and you'll often see that with the Coles super tweeter. These are really good. They play up 30 odd k, something like that, I think, 30 kilohertz, which you know, again, it's just that openness and space that it brings. I am using in my designs, my HA series, a Dynavox ribbon, which is hideously light, hideously fast, and yeah, the clarity, it's just fantastic. So what I discovered on my search for these piezoelectric tweeters is nothing that looked anything like the ones that are in these PE ones. I found no end of PA style bullet tweeters and things like that, which are just god awful things and designed for PA applications, but I stumbled across these. So this is a 41mm piezoelectric tweeter, and there's nothing to it. And this was about £4. That's all, £4. Same with this larger 50mm version. And this is possibly what I'm going to try and integrate, make a bezel for it into these, assuming those tweeters aren't working. So I did a lot of measuring on these, and I found that the extension these have, as high up as I can measure, is pretty impressive. But more so how they perform off axis, because that little bobble in the middle is really the kind of radiating surface. The rest is just like a horn, a waveguide. And I've since put these in my lounge speakers as the super tweeter, which I've recently built. They use the HF1300, and I did a lot of measuring in the lounge, and these have just been, yeah, a revelation. How open those on-wall speakers I have in there now have become is quite impressive. I'll show you some pictures of that now and a little snippet I did when I was in there. I'll put that in. So I don't know if you can see that properly. I'll put a still picture in now. So I've now used these piezoelectric tweeters, super tweeters, whatever you want to call them, in my lounge speakers, because I'm using the HF1300 and a 6.5-inch V4 woofer, and they are fantastic. I'm really surprised. They've really opened up the sound of these. It's quite mad, really. I mean, they're an on-wall speaker, so they're a compromise anyway, but you know, I've mucked around with these to try and get them as good as I can, and they sit in the square Celestian bezel really well. So yeah, very interesting. I mean, again, I'll put the still picture in now. So yeah, hopefully you can see in the middle there, the kind of radiating area surface is teeny, and the off axis with these, when I've been measuring in here, has been really good. So yeah, for something that only costs £3 or £4, I have been very surprised, pleasantly surprised. In terms of a crossover though, these are quite difficult to work with, because if you put a multimeter across them, there's no DC resistance to them. You know, even in the meg ohms, there's just nothing there. So to get a crossover to work, because that filter needs to see an impedance, I ended up just putting a resistor across these to kind of trick the high pass filter, and then everything was good. Also, I bought a ton of these because they're really cheap. So in future builds, don't be surprised if you see these things everywhere. Right, so let's have a look around one of these. These are in a walnut veneer, I think. So I will sand these because there are a few nicks and things like that which should come out. I think from the literature, the top, sides and bottom are chipboard, veneered both sides. The back is Baltic birch, I think. Really thick. It's got to be a good inch thick. So yeah. And here's a close-up of the front. So our KEF B200 woofer, beautiful condition. big base port at the bottom loaded with straws. I'm assuming that's to just reduce port noise. Our tweeter, I think that's Audax, but we'll see when we take it apart. It looks skew-iffed as well. And this piezoelectric super tweeter. Which is quite a unique looking thing. It almost looks like it's an afterthought with these wood screws. But yeah, anyway, I'm waffling on quite a lot in this video, so let's lay them on their back and take them apart. Machine screws, which is nice. Beautiful. Look at the condition of that. My God. I have never seen a B200 in that condition before. That's incredible. Wow. Okay. Let's go with our tweeter next. Audax, hey, I was right. And again, the condition of that. So that's the HD 12x9 D25, 8 to 9 ohms. Yeah, doesn't look in bad condition. Okay, let's try and carefully take this out. These look like wood screws to me. Yeah. They're rounded off, so someone's taken these out before, probably to try and find out what's going on. Right. So yeah, just a normal wood screw. Yeah, there we go. And that's it. So that's a paper waveguide with a little radiating surface in the middle. Yeah. Right. Wow. I'll take you in to have a look at this in a minute, because the port isn't very long, but the drinking straws are. Right, let's cut out our lead wires to the binding posts. I'll give you a really good look inside in a minute. And let's fetch out our crossover. Right, I'll bring you in for a closer look and then we will have a look at the crossover. A wobbly cam here, so hopefully you can see the end of the cardboard tube or plastic tube, but then all those drinking straws and that's exactly what they are. So we've got 25mm thick foam, inch thick foam, and then I think it's 12mm bituminous felt glued to the panels. Chipboard front baffle, quite thick, veneered. So there we go. Right, so there's our crossover. So what I'll do, I will draw this all out shortly. But let's have a quick look at these drivers. So here's our B200 and it's just immaculate. I've used a lot of these and I've never come across one in this condition. I mean, that's just stunning, absolutely stunning. .2 ohms is what you'd expect to see for an 8 ohm woofer. Let's have a look at our tweeter. .1. I'm not expecting to get anything on this. Yep. Absolutely nothing. Okay, so if we look at our crossover, we have the input wires here, and these wires here went to our super tweeter, and it looks from this like this little section here and this resistor are all that's concerned with the super tweeter. So we have a 0.47 microfarad capacitor. These are polyester, and a little iron core inductor, so, and a resistor to attenuate the circuit at the beginning. So just a second order on our tweeter circuit, sorry, super tweeter circuit. Yeah, I'm going to go through this and then come back to you on what's what on the crossover. Okay, I've had a look through this and yeah, there's quite a bit going on there, so I will aim to draw this out as best I can. So let's just get a set of rails down. Okay, let's look at our woofer circuit first. So our woofer circuit comes in on our positive here to this inductor first, which is an iron core, and then we carry on to this inductor here, which is another iron core. In part 2 I'll measure these and give you the values for them, but I won't do that until I start stripping down the crossover. And then we come into our woofer positive, and then this first inductor here, which is going to be quite a big value, has this capacitor here, which I think is a polyester film cap. It's 4.7 microfarad. It's going down to ground, but across this we have a 4.7 ohm resistor, and it is across it, it's not in series with it or anything like that. And then on this inductor here we have a 10 microfarad electrolytic capacitor down to ground. So our woofer's using a 4th order crossover, so potentially around 24 dB per octave it's rolling off wherever this is tuned to roll off down, which is quite steep. So we've got quite a lot of things in the signal path, and they're iron core as well. And at higher power levels they can saturate and cause a bit of smearing really, so we'll see what the values are and whether it's worth getting those out the signal path. So if we look at our tweeter circuit now, here's our positive rail. We come in through this resistor here, which is a 2.4 ohm, so that's attenuating the whole circuit. And then we carry on to this capacitor here, which is 4.7 microfarad. And then we're grounding this capacitor with this little iron core inductor. Then we carry on through this capacitor here. I don't know what type of capacitor that is. I don't think it's electrolytic. That's 4.7 as well. And then we carry on through a little inductor. And that little inductor has a 2.2 microfarad capacitor to ground, and then we hit the negative of our tweeter. So we've got a 3rd order high pass circuit made up of these 2 caps and this inductor, and then a 2nd order low pass. So we're quite aggressively rolling off the top as well, because obviously we're using this super tweeter. So on our super tweeter circuit we come in through a 6.8 ohm resistor into this polyester cap, which is 0.47 microfarad, and we ground that capacitor with this little iron core inductor, and we go into the negative of our super tweeter. So there we go, quite a bit going on in there. I would say these capacitors 1, 2, 3 are of pretty good quality. These Erie caps I know fail and go out of spec. I see them in a lot of Celestian speakers. This jobby we've got here, not too sure on what that is type wise, and we've got this L cap electrolytic. I mean, they go out of spec quite a lot. Some resistors. This 4.7 ohm is actually on the back, so whether that was an afterthought I don't know, but there we go. So yeah, that's really an overview of these speakers. In part 2 we will get cracking with integrating a new super tweeter. We'll also pick this apart and see how all these components are holding up and what we need to replace and what we have to do to this circuit here to get a new super tweeter to work. It is got a link there So this could be easily converted into a third order if I need to use that sort of slope. But yeah, we'll see. Anyway, catch you on the next one.